Funding for the Windsors, a royal family, has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the annual financial support of viewers like you.
Like Windsor Castle, the family which took its name seemed ancient, imperishable. This is the last great dynasty in Europe. Its rituals date back 1,000 years to the Saxon kings. There is an element of magic that binds the British to their monarchy. And a strong element of calculation.
One of the ways in which the British monarchy has survived has been its capacity to reinvent itself from one generation to another, and has been the capacity of the British people to see in the monarchy itself as an institution different things at different times which have resonated with their ordinary lives and hopes and expectations.
The royal family provides the British with a soap opera of sovereigns.
One of the functions of the royal family in the minds of people is to be the continuing story of patent place. Birth, death, marriages. And of course, in that story, there is always somebody who's not actually behaving as they should be, or the dark princess, if you like. The story goes on.
It is a story of powerful women and of men forced to wait a lifetime for the throne. It is the story of a charming prince who would disappoint a nation.
He was the most famous man in the world. He was the blue-eyed boy of the whole world. Everybody wanted to touch him. I mean, you know, he looked divine, and he had this terrific charm and a smile and the easy manner.
A charming prince who became king and was himself disappointed.
It was very a painful moment. And I had to say, I'm afraid, sir, she is not going to have the privilege of being Royal Highness. And perhaps I shouldn't say it, it's too intimate. His Royal Highness burst into tears on my shoulder.
My first word.
It is the story of a king painfully shy, who became a symbol of World War II patriotism. A story of dedication and service.
There is a motto which has been borne by many of my ancestors, a noble motto: I serve. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
A story of a new generation of royals.
She hadn't had love affairs, and she was very beautiful, and she came from a very good home. And I did say to my son-in-law, her father, I did say, it's the first time the Queen of England's ever been chosen by a referendum, because he really was.
A new generation that promised to be less stuffy and more with it.
All these men around here.
Love you!
I'll see you later.
I thought she was a splendid girl, but I think basically unsuited to the task of being a royal princess.
Fairy tales, even when they go wrong, are a wonderful copy.
Oh, God. Sometimes I need you several times a week.
So do I. I need you all the week, all the time.
To all, to each, a happy Christmas. God bless you.
It is the story of the royal family's clever use of the media.
Perhaps never before has a newsreel camera captured such charming informal close-ups of almost every member of our royal family.
The first film about the royal family was one of the most skillfully executed propaganda exercises which I certainly can remember. It was a masterstroke, a superb piece of public relations. I suspect a lot of other people too have progressively wondered if the royal family are prepared to make a film taking you into their house, taking you to their picnics, then why shouldn't the paparazzi sneak around in rhododendrons taking pictures of royal princesses bathing?
I think it is the Queen that one's so desperately sorry for. It's difficult for her to understand somebody who doesn't have a sense of duty. Everybody thinks in a way, what fun to be the Queen if you can be the Queen for a day. But for a lifetime to have that life.
Seeing what she looked upon as her own home go up in flames was devastating. And it came in a year when she'd had quite enough blows to withstand.
The Windsors is the story of a royal family. On January the 31st, 1952, King George VI bade farewell to his daughter, Princess Elizabeth, and her husband, Philip. Illness prevented him from making this trip to East Africa, the first stop on a Commonwealth tour. A week later, they left their lodge in Kenya to watch wildlife from a remote lookout post called Treetops.
Our time at Treetops was a magical time. And it was, you know, this tiny, tiny house built up in this giant fig tree. It was so exciting because this wonderful observation platform looking down onto the salt lick. And at night, all the elephants come. And the Queen loved it because, of course, she could use her cine camera.
There was a ladder that went to a little platform at the top of the tree. And we climbed up, and we actually saw this incredible iridescent light that comes before sunrise over the jungle, which I'm sure she'll never forget.
Exhausted after a long night at the lookout, they returned to their lodge to sleep. Meanwhile, Princess Elizabeth's private secretary had gone into town, where he was accosted by a journalist.
He said, "Come here, come here." And so we went into the telephone booth together, and I remember he was trying to take a cigarette out of the pack with trembling hands. And he said, "The King's dead." Well, that was a shock, I can tell you.
I noticed this radio on the shelf in the study, so very carefully closing the door as close as I could, I then switched up the radio very low and hunted around on it, and eventually I found the overseas wavelength of the BBC.
This is London. It is with the greatest sorrow that we make the following announcement. It was announced from Sandringham at 10:45 today, February the 6th, 1952, that the King, who retired to rest last night in his usual health, passed peacefully away in his sleep earlier this morning. The BBC is now closing down for the rest of the day, except for the advertised news bulletins and summaries, shipping forecasts and gale warnings.
So, switch off, I went round and woke Prince Philip up and told him. And it was his job to tell the Queen. Probably the worst moment of his life, to have to do that. And all he could say was, this will be a terrible blow. He took her out into the garden, and they walked up and down, slowly up and down the lawn, while he talked and talked and talked to her.
After a short while, the princess came back, and so I went and gave her a hug. I think, all one thought of was that her father's dead. She adores her father, and how sad. And really, it was only, later on, one thought, my God, it's the king who's dead. And so I didn't even curtsy to her then. It was only later on, obviously, that I, started curtsying to her properly like that.
And then I did what I had to do, which is say, now the only question I have to ask you at this stage is, what do you wish to be called when you're on the throne? She said, oh, my own name, of course, Elizabeth. So I said, right, Elizabeth II.
The High and Mighty Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become Queen Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of this realm, and of all her other realms and territories.
From Australia to the Arctic, Elizabeth was proclaimed Queen. Her realm included 9 Commonwealth countries and a colonial empire around the globe.
In the meantime, we went into action to get the whole thing packed up, because the first thing we knew, instinctively, is we had to go straight back to London.
The Queen's secretary asked the press to respect her privacy and take no pictures as they prepared to drive to the airport.
Now, you'll hardly believe this, but by the side of the road were all the press photographers, with their cameras hanging in their left hand and waving with their right hand like that. Well, I don't think you could do that now.
When she returned to London, the Queen was met by her veteran Prime Minister, Winston Churchill.
As we taxied up, the Queen looked out and could see that her car, her little Austin Princess, wasn't there. And all the big royal black limousines were there. And she said, oh God, they sent the hearses. And one knew somehow that, suddenly there was this 25-year-old woman, and it was completely the end of her private life, that all the fun she'd had with her husband and her children, this had come to an end, and that she was facing this lifetime of public work.
The new reign coincided with the end of wartime restrictions in Britain. The government even abolished rationing of candy in time for the coronation.
There was an astonishing mood about the coronation of 1953, which I think will never be recaptured. There was then a sense of hope and excitement about the future. People talked a great deal about the new Elizabethan age. Britain had just climbed Mount Everest. Churchill was back in Downing Street. There was a sense in which the coronation was the kind of present for having done so well in the Second World War. And everybody was very hopeful and ardent and excited about a future which they believed would be as great as the past that had gone before.
We sang songs like Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory, and I think my own children now would find it very difficult to understand that sort of communal spirit in a crowd of that kind. And everyone felt this sense of a new Elizabethan age beginning with a queen who wasn't very much older than we were.
Everybody had been starved not only of bread and meat and butter, but also of light and colour and excitement. And there came to the throne this dazzling creature, and you can't believe what she looked like, particularly when she put a tiara on. I mean, she really looked marvellous, with wonderful eyes and, you know, and a lovely, lovely smile. And a gallant, handsome consort. What more can you want?
The coach took about 15 seconds to pass us at a slow walking pace. It looked absolutely fabulous. And inside, a tiny little queen looking really fragile, as if she were made of porcelain. It was just a wonderful moment. We'd waited all that time in the rain to see her. And there she was, looking absolutely magnificent, a symbol of everything we hoped for.
There was a debate about whether a wider audience should see the coronation through the new medium of television. The Cabinet decided not to allow cameras into Westminster Abbey. But the Queen had the last word.
The Queen, I think, understood, which apparently the Cabinet didn't fully understand, that here's this new medium, television, which would made it possible for the public to see this great ceremony. And I think she saw the point of this straight away, and she was the one who finally said, yes, television would be shown, would be allowed into the Abbey. None of us will ever see anything like it again. And here's something that Hollywood couldn't possibly invent.
Churchill had worried that television would interfere with the dignity of the occasion. Strict rules were drawn up about what could be shown.
I had a centre button which was there in case of emergency. One reason for the centre button was the rule that there should be no close-ups. Now, the Queen had been crowned. She was coming down the aisle. I can see her now. Gorgeous it was. And she came closer and closer and closer. Under no circumstances would I have pushed that centre button. I thought the picture was gorgeous. She was gracious. She looked beautiful. And I will never forget it.
The coronation had all the magic of a fairy tale.
One of the functions of the royal family in the minds of people is to be the continuing story of Peyton Place. The story goes on, and of course, in that story, there is always somebody who's not actually behaving as they should be, or if you'd like to put it differently, in any archetypal situation, there is always the wicked fairy, or the dark princess, if you like. I mean, the archetypal picture of the princess is with lovely golden hair, but her sister has black hair, doesn't she? And she is the subject of the moon, not of the sun. And so I think that in order to give a bit of spice to the affair, there's always got to be something going slightly wrong.
What was going wrong was that the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, was having a secret romance.
She was absolutely lovely, really lovely, enormous eyes, and absolutely beautiful. And she had great grace, and she really was outstanding.
I think people forget now quite what glamour she did have. I mean, she had the same sort of star quality that the Princess of Wales has now got.
The man she was in love with was Group Captain Peter Townsend, who was attached to the royal household.
One's job was to be there to serve and to be on call. Often during evenings at Sandringham, there was a game of canasta. The Queen Mother, the Princess Elizabeth, and Princess Margaret, perhaps some other chap. And sometimes I was asked to join in. I'm not a man for indoor games, and I'm quite a stupid card player, but somehow I got inveigled into playing this game, which became a scream. You know, you're cheating or you're not, but always with gales of laughter.
Peter Townsend travelled the world with the royal family. When Princess Margaret was 16, they all went on a long tour of South Africa.
It was the most natural thing in the world that they should fall for each other. The only tiresome thing was, well, there was a 16-year age difference. He already had a wife, even if it wasn't going well. Big hurdles to overcome.
On Coronation Day itself, the secret romance was discovered in a telltale moment.
After the coronation, when they were all standing in the porch of Westminster Abbey waiting for their coaches, all feeling rather worn out, Princess Margaret, with a sort of very happy look, picked a piece of cotton fluff off Group Captain Townsend's uniform and sort of brushed her hand along the medals. And this was certainly picked up.
American newspapers ran the story. By now, Peter Townsend was divorced. Courtiers and ministers reminded the Queen of the abdication crisis, when divorce had rocked the throne.
They would have said, I don't think it's proper that your sister, ma'am, should marry somebody who is divorced. That's the way the cookie crumbled in those days. I mean, divorce now is, it's a small change of life, isn't it, really? Wasn't in those days. It was big stuff.
Townsend was banished to Brussels, where a new post was invented for him, air attaché. The timing was cruel. He was sent away while Margaret was on tour with her mother. Hoping that the romance would fade away, the palace told Margaret to wait 2 years, until she was 25, when she could marry without the Queen's consent. But Margaret's predicament worried the Queen.
She was very protective to Princess Margaret, who was much more sort of fun-loving and, you know, in a way, more brilliant. She had got great natural gifts of she could have gone on the stage any time she liked and been a huge success.
From earliest childhood, Princess Margaret was always seen as the naughty, funny one, and Princess Elizabeth as the sensible one, as in the 1940 wartime broadcast to the children of the Empire.
We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well. For God will care for us and give us victory and peace. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place. My sister is by my side, and we are both going to say good night to you. Come on, Margaret. Good night, children. Good night, and good luck to you all.
When Princess Margaret was 25, the country eagerly awaited a decision. But she was faced with a brutal choice. If she married the man she loved, she must give up her royal title and her income. The press encroached as never before, but the palace offered little help.
The press officer himself was a perfectly decent chap. All I remember his saying to me was, don't speak to the press. Well, it's not all that easy. I had to fight my own little battle. It was a great trial, of course, trying to keep more or less one's cool when being plied with questions and snapped with cameras.
Finally, the decision was announced.
The love and affection, sympathy and understanding of the nation and Commonwealth go out to Princess Margaret. And now she says, mindful of the Church's teaching that Christian marriage is indissoluble, and conscious of my duty to the Commonwealth, I have resolved to put these considerations before any others. I have reached this decision entirely alone, and in doing so, I have been strengthened by the unfailing support and devotion of Group Captain Townsend. I am deeply grateful for the concern of all those who have constantly prayed for my happiness.
I think there was very strong opinion on Princess Margaret's side. The sight of this pretty young girl being coerced by the Archbishop of Canterbury, by the Prime Minister, and made to utter kind of rather pompous sentence about she had come to realise that she owed it to the Commonwealth not to do it. This struck one as very odd. And there was an awful feeling that this poor girl had been bullied.
The popular press concluded that Princess Margaret had been a victim of the establishment, sacrificed for an old-fashioned principle.
I don't think it's quite fair to say she was sacrificed, no. She may have sacrificed herself, but that's not quite the same thing.
She was a bird born in a gilded cage, so to speak. She was born into that life of what most of us would see as a very captive sort of life, and I think that she would have found it very difficult to live as an ordinary person. They've never had to sort of do their own shopping. They've never had to do any of the, take their clothes to the cleaners. They've never had to do any of the ordinary things.
I think giving up that marriage was tragic, really, and was a cause of enormous sadness in her life. And that since then things have changed so much that it wouldn't matter one little bit today. She was full of vitality and full of the joys of life. It was a personal tragedy for her.
The Queen's empire had shrunk, replaced by self-governing Commonwealth nations. She delighted in her duties as head of the Commonwealth. Her welcomes everywhere were effusive. Australia was no exception.
All I ask you to remember is that every man, woman and child who even sees you with a passing glimpse as you go by will remember it with joy. In the words of the old 17th century poet who wrote those famous words, I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die.
But behind the pomp, there were problems. Prince Philip had expected to become an admiral. Instead, he found himself trailing 3 paces behind his wife.
He used to say, you know, I'm neither one thing nor the other. I'm nothing. But whether he really meant that, I think it's just frustration, a lot of it.
After all, Prince Philip was basically a man. And he was a big man. And he was a man's man, too. I think there must have been moments when it would have been pretty heavy for him to take.
Prince Philip of Greece was Lord Louis Mountbatten's nephew. He had been brought up by the Mountbatten family and had taken its name.
Prince Philip was a breath of fresh air, really, to us, because my sister and I were just 2 girls in the family, and we'd had no brothers. And here was this, even in those days, rather glamorous first cousin. Although he was Prince Philip of Greece, he was certainly far from being dark and swarthy. He was a blue-eyed blonde, and therefore a sort of Viking appearance.
Princess Elizabeth met him when she was 13 on a visit to Dartmouth Naval College, organised by Lord Louis Mountbatten for the royal family.
The cadet who was told to look after the princesses was Prince Philip. Princess Elizabeth was dazzled by him. He was rather grand and rather sort of offhand. These 2 little gals who were a lot younger than him. But he did everything wonderfully well, and he was very good looking. When they finally left, he followed them in a little sailing boat. He zigzagged up and down the River Dart after them, waving. I think from then on, he was the young man in her life. We've all had young men in our lives at that moment, but she was being very single-minded and very determined, never changed. I'm sure Lord Louis Mountbatten was delighted about it, and I'm sure he must have fostered it.
Mountbatten was a passionate plotter. He loved conniving, fixing things, pulling strings. He did so with the most transparent, small, boyish obviousness.
In 1946, Mountbatten organised his elder daughter's wedding, where Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip were thrown together again.
Hearty cheering accompanied every car through the town. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the Abbey, Prince Philip of Greece waits to escort the royal family from their car. Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, both acting as bridesmaids, wore very attractive, full-skirted dresses of pale blue.
They were engaged soon afterwards. It was a dream come true for Lord Mountbatten. He now expected the royal family to take his name.
He cared desperately about the name, and he always believed that the royal house should be not the House of Windsor, but House of Mountbatten-Windsor. He was defeated on that. He was defeated again and again. He kept coming back, he kept chipping away.
The government was wary of Mountbatten's influence on the Queen. The Prime Minister Winston Churchill insisted that the royal family name should remain Windsor.
He was an old, very experienced man. She was very young and a new queen, and understandably felt perhaps it wasn't her duty to stand up to him and say, no, I don't want to do this. And as I'm sure everybody would understand, it was very hurting, I think, to Prince Philip that the one thing he felt he'd brought to his marriage, which was his name, was no longer possible.
I'm just a bloody amoeba, complained Philip. With his private secretary, Mike Parker, an old Navy friend, he explored life outside the palace. Once a week, they went off secretly to Soho, to lunch with actors, writers and photographers. They called it the Thursday Club.
I often used to wonder why Mike got back rather pleased on Thursday evening. And I said to him, what is it you do on a Thursday? And then he told me, you see, and I was quite horrified. I said, well, as long as you're relaxing, but don't for goodness get found out.
The Queen rather enjoyed the stories that we would unfold after being at the Thursday Club. But her immediate reaction as we came through the door was one of reeling back a little, because we'd probably been smelling somewhat from a glass of port or two at the end of lunch.
In 1956, Prince Philip, still looking for a role, went off on a 6-month world tour accompanied by Mike Parker. While they were away, Mike Parker's wife sued him for divorce. The press seized the opportunity to imply that Prince Philip's marriage was also on the rocks because of his long absence. The palace acted immediately to keep the royal family away from scandal. Mike Parker had to go.
As I descended steps from the aircraft, I saw a chap from the palace, the household, who told me that a press conference had been arranged. I was so pleased to see a friendly face and so on. And then I was absolutely stunned when he looked at me and he said, well, from now on, you're on your own.
In Prince Philip's absence, the country had faced an international crisis. Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal Company. In response, Britain and France invaded the canal zone. Admiral Mountbatten helped plan the invasion, against his better judgment.
Mountbatten was passionately and almost publicly opposed to Suez. He wrote 2 letters of resignation. He repeatedly told ministers that he thought the operation was politically lunatic and militarily unsound. It would be impossible for him to have opposed it more strongly and remained in office. Whether in any way the Queen shared those views, I have no idea. My personal guess would be that she would have felt very much the same way about it.
The country was divided over Suez and humiliated when Britain was forced to withdraw. Suez bred a mood of national self-doubt, which extended to the role of the Queen, symbol of the new Elizabethan age. The Queen was criticised for the first time by the editor of the National and English Review.
To judge from your article, you expect the Queen to have qualities of a wit. You would like her to be a better orator. You would like her to be a TV personality, in addition to being a diligent, dutiful, and devoted monarch and a mother.
All I would like to see is the Queen's own character coming through. And I know that if her character is allowed to come through, the effect will be terrific. The effect at the moment is, frankly, not terrific. And that's not a criticism of her. That's a criticism of the way the thing is organised.
As I was leaving the building after the interview, an elderly man, no doubt a good deal younger than I am now, but he seemed to be very elderly at the time, approached me and gave me a real wallop on the side of the face. My article was regarded by an enormous number of people as virtually high treason.
I felt that something had to be done about it. I realized that Prince Philip could not do it himself or any other member of the royal family.
Happy Christmas. 25 years ago, my grandfather broadcast the first of these Christmas messages. Today is another landmark.
In an effort to make the Queen more accessible, the palace televised her Christmas message.
Homes on Christmas Day. My own family often gather round to watch television, as they are at this moment. And that is how I imagine you now. I very much hope that this new medium will make my Christmas message more personal and direct.
Things really didn't change at all in the royal household and in the royal routine. In what was advertised as being a great new age. I mean, the propaganda hype at the time was this was a great new age, new Elizabethan age, all that sort of thing. Nothing new was happening at all.
Despite more exposure to the cameras, the Queen and her growing family seemed out of touch with the modern world.
It must be incredibly difficult for someone as hedged in by protocol, by rules, by manners, to see anything of the real world. You can be told about it, but to watch its view of you changing and to evaluate that and to know how much you ought to adapt to that, that must be incredibly hard. And there, of course, you need very far-sighted advisors. You need people of real perception, not easy to find.
John Grigg felt the courtiers were to blame.
I think the grain of truth was that I think that we were a bit stuffy. You know, tweedy was the word John used. Tweedy. Tweedy was the word. Quite a clever word.
We laughed it off. We laughed it off. We didn't mind being called Tweedy. It was largely, if in fact you go to Sandringham in the depth of winter, you've damn well got to wear tweeds to survive.
Princess Margaret was moving with the times. She had married a society photographer, Tony Armstrong-Jones.
These were a new kind of royals. They had far more contacts, but among writers and artists, designers, and so forth, not among stuffy courtiers. And they looked freer, and they became the new family model of fast-travelling, hard-working, affluent, high-spending young people.
The Queen was greeted by her cousin, Earl Mountbatten of Burma, who also welcomed his nephew, Prince Philip. They had come to see the preview of a visual autobiography of the life and times of Lord Mountbatten.
Lord Mountbatten was keen to move the monarchy into the television age. His son-in-law later suggested making a documentary about the private life of the Queen and her family.
It was really felt by a lot of people, our friends and people in the family, that it was sad that the country didn't realize what type of people they were, the Queen and Prince Philip and her children. Most pictured, I think, the Queen, who was rather seen as a figurehead and not known, sort of not understood, I don't think, by the public.
see if she's... I think we should be able to let the puppies out here, sir. Yeah. Yes, try. Yes, try. Look at their big ears and their big paws.
He's a lovely big tubby lad, this. Except you are making a fair old mess of my jacket. Aren't you?
The Queen was tremendously cooperative, and I think had very little problem really with the cameras. I think she was finding more difficult with the sound recording. You know, she wasn't used to suddenly to look down and find a microphone down just underneath her face.
Anybody else want any carrots? Let's see what these do.
The first film about the royal family was one of the most skillfully executed propaganda exercises which I certainly can remember. I certainly at the time would have said that it was a masterstroke, a superb piece of public relations. I suspect a lot of other people too have progressively wondered more and more whether in the long run it was a sensible thing to do. But if the royal family were prepared to make a film taking you into their house, taking you to their picnics, then why shouldn't the paparazzi sneak around in rhododendrons taking pictures of royal princesses bathing? But they were fair game, and I think you could argue that that film symbolised the launching of the royal family down a long and very dangerous descent.
In the same week their film was broadcast, the royal family orchestrated another television spectacular. In an ancient castle in Wales, Prince Charles was formally invested as Prince of Wales. Princess Margaret's husband, now Lord Snowdon, played a central part in a uniform he designed for the occasion.
The dais will be about there. And one wants to think of it.
He had
as a
also
set
designed
going
the
on,
set,
rather
especially
than
for
a
television.
And I think that this looks super, I must say. I'm absolutely plain slate. But the important thing about the dais is so that cameras can come in from behind and from in front.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship. And faith and truth I will bear unto thee, to live and die against all manner of folks.
It was a kind of charade acted out in a Welsh castle. Partly, I think, a deliberate intention of bringing forward the young, of making it clear that the middle-aged, moving slowly towards being elderly members of the royal family were not the whole story, but a new generation was coming on, a new generation filled with promise and romantic and glamorous and bound to lead the country into new and better ways. In a way, it was an attempt almost to start the new Elizabethan age all over again.
I know perhaps some people would think that it is rather anachronistic and out of place in this world, which is perhaps somewhat cynical. But I think it can mean quite a lot if one goes about it in the right way.
The family were congratulated on another television success. A few weeks later came a television blunder. Prince Philip announced that the royal family would soon go into the red and pleaded royal poverty.
Inevitably, if nothing happens, we shall either have to, I don't know, we may have to move into smaller premises, who knows?
Well, you've had to close down certain large houses, such as Sandringham, haven't you? I understand from this dispatch.
No, not altogether. We've closed down. Well, for instance, that she had a small yacht which she had to sell, and I should probably have to give up polo fairly soon, things like that.
Prince Philip's remarks brought the issue into the public arena, forcing the government to discuss the royal pay raise in a parliamentary select committee. One of its members was the royal's most outspoken critic.
When Prince Philip comes along and says he'll have to engage in the supreme hardship of doing without his polo and going into a suburban semi-detached, it really is more than I can bear.
The royal family had parliamentary supporters who ensured a pay raise. Prince Philip continued to play polo. Over the years, the debate over supporting the royal family continued, but the tone of the press grew more cynical.
You see, the point really is this, that it wasn't just a question of pounds, shillings and pence as we had in those days, but it was really a question of how is the monarchy run and is it good value for money?
Princess Margaret, critics complained, did not give value for money. In 1976, she appeared on the front page of the News of the World, on holiday in Moustique with her friend Roddy Llewellyn. This drove the palace to announce her separation from Lord Snowdon.
When the Snowdon marriage broke up, I think the dream family began to shatter. That was the first of them. I mean, it looks very tame now because the others have gone so spectacularly public. Private Eye had a cover at the time of the two of them sitting in a car, and Margaret was saying, "What's all this about us rowing in public?" And he was saying, "Shut up, you bitch, and keep smiling."
25 years after she had been denied permission to marry a divorced man, Princess Margaret herself was divorced, and she had become the first casualty of a new critical mood.
I don't think there's any doubt that from the late 1970s, we have, in a sense, moved into a new world for the monarchy, a harsher world, a less happy world, a less deferential world. We can see a growing sense of anxiety about the British nation, about the British economy, about Britain's place in the world.
A series of bitter industrial disputes had produced a deeply divided nation and forced a general election. Sectarian troubles in Ireland had spilled over into mainland Britain. In such gloomy times, there was a reluctance to celebrate the Queen's Silver Jubilee.
It was a grim time. The post-war consensus was over, England wasn't working, and the Jubilee seemed like an attempt to paper over these cracks with faded coronation wallpaper. It was the coronation revisited, but for a lot of us, it didn't really work anymore.
We've got flags here, which start off for all size people. If there's any little men, they've got little flags from 4p, 7p, and we can get bigger ones, which you can't afford yet, because we haven't collected a lot.
9 months before the date, most people were going around grumbling, saying, who wants a Jubilee, and it's a perfectly absurd idea, and it'll all be false, and it'll all be artificial. And then, little by little, the popular mood adopted it and whipped it up and whipped themselves up into a kind of frenzy of appreciation. Partly, I think, reflecting genuine affection and respect for the Queen. Partly just instinct that it was great fun to have a jolly.
The Queen saw it as a momentous time because it was really the first time she realized the affection in which she was felt. And it made her feel incredibly humble. Why? What have I done to deserve this? Because I've only just done my duty.
The Queen's Jubilee brought back memories of a past that seemed golden and a more united kingdom. But this was a different nation now. 2 years later, its divisions struck at the heart of the royal family itself.
It was a most lovely, sunny bank holiday Monday. We just went out round the harbour and we were just going to pick up the lobster pots. And the IRA had obviously been sitting, watching us all getting into the boat, these old people and these children. And they just waited till they thought it was a suitable moment and set off the bomb that had been planted in the boat. The bomb was found under the engine, and so as my father was driving, he was killed instantly. The boat was blasted to smithereens, and so many of the bits of wood were found in my sister's skin, even in her eyeballs. They could tell it was a green wooden boat, and you could see all these bits of green wood coming out of her later. He went out like a shooting star, and I think that's the way he perhaps would have chosen. Perhaps not by an IRA bomb, but I mean, that sort of a death.
Charles, Prince of Wales, had been close to Lord Mountbatten. His great-uncle's death left the heir to the throne dangerously adrift. A young woman later told Charles, "You looked so sad. It was the most tragic thing I've ever seen. My heart bled for you." That young woman's name was Diana.
The Windsors, a royal family, will continue in a moment. You can purchase The Windsors on video for $29.95 plus shipping and handling. To order this 4-hour series, call WGBH Boston Video at 1-800-255-9424.
You're watching PBS.